I smoothed my dress nervously as we pulled up to the upscale restaurant where Mason's parents had insisted on celebrating their anniversary. The valet opened the door and I plastered on a smile, determined not to let their condescending attitudes ruin this evening for Chloe. As we entered, the hostess greeted us warmly. "Welcome. You must be the Wilsons. Your table is right this way." We followed her through the elegant dining room until she stopped at a table set for 4. Mason's parents, Janet and Perry, were already seated, looking as prim and proper as ever. "Here we are," the hostess announced. "A table for 4. Janet's eyes narrowed as she looked from Mason to Chloe, then back at me. "Oh, we didn't expect a +1 for a family dinner." The words hit me like a slap in the face. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out as humiliation washed over me. Mason shifted uncomfortably. "Mother, Ruby is my wife. Of course she's invited." "Well, we only made reservations for the 4 of us," Janet said, her tone clipped. "I'm sure the staff can squeeze in another chair, but it's hardly appropriate for this occasion." My cheeks burned and I fought back tears. This was just another reminder that I would never be accepted as part of their perfect family. A gentle hand on my arm made me jump. "Ma'am, please come with me." I turned to see a kind-faced man in a chef's coat regarding me with concern. There was something vaguely familiar about him, but I couldn't place it. I should go," I stammered, unable to bear another moment of Janet's disdain. "Nonsense," the chef said firmly. "You're a guest in my restaurant, and I'll see that you're treated as such. Please, follow me." Too stunned to protest, I let him lead me away from the table and through a side door. Once we were in the hallway, he turned to me with an apologetic look. "I'm so sorry you had to experience that. No one deserves such disrespect, especially from their own family." He shook his head. "I watched that woman belittle you, and I had to intervene." "Thank you," I managed, still reeling from the encounter. "But why?" The chef's eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled. "Don't you remember me, Ruby? It's Elijah. Elijah Hawthorne. We went to high school together." Elijah. The name unleashed a torrent of memories from those carefree days when we were madly in love, before I'd let him go to chase after what I thought was a more promising future with Mason. "Elijah?" I gasped. I can't believe it's you." His smile widened. "In the flesh. And I have an idea about how we can show your delightful in-laws that you deserve to be treated with respect." A tiny spark of hope flickered to life in my heart. Maybe this night didn't have to be a total disaster after all. I stared at Elijah in disbelief, memories of our high school days flooding back. The way his green eyes would crinkle at the corners when he laughed. The warmth of his calloused hands from working part-time at the local auto shop. The soft brush of his lips against mine under the old oak tree behind the football field. Those stolen moments of bliss seemed a lifetime ago. I'd let my dreams of a storybook future cloud my judgment, trading the comfort and security of Elijah's love for the promise of something better with Mason. "Elijah, I don't know what to say," I stammered, drinking in the familiar lines of his face. He'd matured into a strikingly handsome man, but those kind eyes were the same as I remembered. He gave me a lopsided grin. "You can start by telling me how you ended up with that arrogant prick who doesn't deserve you." I flinched at his words, but couldn't find it in me to defend Mason's behavior tonight. Elijah had seen firsthand how little regard his family had for me. "It's complicated," I said finally. "When we were younger, I thought Mason could give me the life I dreamed of, a wealthy, respected family to be a part of. But over the years, I've realized that dream came at a cost I wasn't prepared for." Elijah's expression softened, and he placed a comforting hand on my arm. "You've sacrificed too much of yourself, Ruby. When we were together, you were this vibrant, passionate woman who lit up every room she walked into. But just now, I barely recognized that dimmed version of you." Tears stung my eyes as I realized just how right he was. Somewhere along the way, I'd let Mason's family grind me down into a meek, insecure shadow of my former self. "I don't know how to find that person again," I admitted in a small voice. Elijah cupped my cheek, his touch warm and familiar. "Then let me help you. You deserve to be cherished, Ruby, something that arrogant bastard will never do." A reckless thought took root in my mind. What if I did let Elijah back into my life? He was offering an escape, a chance to rediscover the confidence Mason's family had slowly drained from me over the years. "You'd do that?" I asked, hardly daring to hope. "After how I hurt you all those years ago?" "In a heartbeat," he said without hesitation. "Because even after all this time, I've never stopped caring about you, Ruby. Let me be the one who shows you how worthy you truly are." His words unlocked something inside me, a part of myself I thought had shriveled away long ago. I felt a spark of defiance, of rebellion against the belittling treatment I'd endured for far too long. Straightening my shoulders, I met Elijah's gaze head-on. All right, let's go remind that miserable family of mine that they're not the only ones capable of making a scene. Elijah's answering grin was equal parts mischievous and admiring. That's my girl, just like old times, you and me against the world. I couldn't help but smile back, excitement and nerves fluttering in my chest. This night was about to take a very unexpected turn. Emboldened by Elijah's presence, I squared my shoulders and marched back towards the dining room, my heels clicking with determination. He fell into step beside me, the corner of his mouth quirked up in an approving smirk. I could feel the defiant spark I'd thought long extinguished flaring back to life. As we approached the table, Janet's eyes narrowed to slits at the sight of Elijah. "And just who is this?" she demanded, her tone dripping with disdain. "Ruby's friend," Elijah said smoothly, pulling out my chair for me in a gesture of old-fashioned chivalry. "A friend who's appalled by your rude treatment of her this evening." Janet bristled, her cheeks flushing an ugly crimson. "How dare you? This is a private family matter that doesn't concern you." "On the contrary," Elijah countered, his voice hardening. "When you deliberately exclude and humiliate someone under my employ, it very much becomes my concern." Mason shifted uncomfortably, his gaze darting between his mother and me. "Ruby, I'm sure this is all just a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I echoed, anger lending me a boldness I hadn't felt in years. "Your mother made it quite clear I wasn't welcome at your family dinner, Mason." Perry, who had remained silent until now, puffed out his chest in an attempt at intimidation. "Listen here, young man, this is none of your business. We'll treat our daughter-in-law however we see fit." "Actually, sir, that's where you're mistaken," Elijah said, his voice like steel. "As the owner of this establishment, I have a responsibility to ensure all my guests feel welcomed and respected, and from what I witnessed, your behavior towards Ruby violates every policy I uphold." Janet's eyes went wide with outrage. "You can't be serious. This is a private event. Your silly little rules don't apply." Elijah arched one eyebrow coolly. "Is that so? Then would you care to explain to the other diners why you've made such a public scene berating your own family member?" I'm sure they'd be quite interested to hear your justification. My heart raced as I watched the smug confidence drain from Janet's face, replaced by impotent fury. For once, she was the one stripped of her power, forced to confront the consequences of her cruelty. Sensing he'd backed her into a corner, Elijah pressed his advantage. "Well? I'm waiting for an explanation that could possibly excuse your deplorable manners." Janet opened and closed her mouth, struggling to find the words. Finally, she seemed to deflate, slumping back in her chair in sullen defeat. Elijah nodded, satisfied. "I thought as much. Now, if you'll excuse us, Ruby and I have a meal to enjoy, one where she's treated as an honored and respected guest, something you've clearly forgotten how to do." With that parting remark, he ushered me away from their table, leaving Janet and Perry to stew in their humiliation. As for Mason, he could only gape after us, looking utterly blindsided. Once we were seated at a cozy table for two, I let out a shaky breath, adrenaline still coursing through me. "You didn't have to do that, you know," I murmured, equal parts grateful and overwhelmed. Elijah reached across the table, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. "Yes, I did. You've put up with their crap for far too long, Ruby. It's high time someone stood up for you." I blinked back tears, his unwavering support nearly undoing me. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt treasured, valued. And I had Elijah to thank for reigniting that spark of self-worth I thought had burned out long ago. Over a glass of wine, Elijah and I reminisced about our carefree high school days, the nights we'd sneak out to go stargazing, the hours whiled away in each other's arms, the dreams we'd spun of adventures waiting just over the horizon. "You always did have such a thirst for life," Elijah mused, giving me that crooked grin I'd fallen for all those years ago. "Remember how you wanted to backpack across Europe after graduation?" I managed a rueful chuckle. "Yeah, that went out the window pretty quickly when I met Mason's family." His expression sobered. "They really did a number on you, didn't they? Slowly chipped away at that vibrant, passionate woman until you felt like you had to conform to their narrow-minded expectations." Tears pricked my eyes as I nodded. I let them convince me that my dreams were silly, frivolous things, that I needed to pursue stability and status instead of following my heart. Elijah reached across the table, his warm hand engulfing mine. Then it's time you got that fire back, Ruby. Let me help you rediscover who you were always meant to be. I studied him for a long moment, seeing the sincerity burning in those forest green eyes. Here was the one man who had always accepted and cherished me for who I truly was, flaws, ambitions, and all. Could I really take him up on his offer after all this time? After the way I'd shattered both our hearts by leaving him for the illusion of a better life? As if sensing my hesitation, Elijah gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. I'm not asking for us to just pick up where we left off all those years ago. I know too much has happened, too much has changed, but I do want a chance for us to start over on your terms this time. His words unlocked something inside me, granting me a clarity I hadn't felt in longer than I could remember. This was my opportunity to wrest back control of my life, to stop letting others dictate my worth and my path forward. Okay, I said, my voice trembling but resolute. Where do we start? A slow smile curved Elijah's lips. Well, for starters, I think it's high time you learned your way around a kitchen. I'll sign you up for some cooking classes, give you a creative outlet, a chance to get those passionate juices flowing again. I arched one eyebrow at him. Cooking classes? That's your big plan to help me find myself? He shrugged, unperturbed. It's just the first step. Think of it as an immersion course to reawaken all those dreams you've kept bottled up for far too long. Once you've got that spark back, fanning it into a roaring blaze will be easy. The prospect of finally pursuing a passion of my own, unfettered by others' expectations, set my heart racing with a heady mix of excitement and trepidation. But Elijah's steady belief in me bolstered my courage. All right, chef, I said, unable to resist matching his teasing grin. Sign me up for those classes. It's time I stopped letting my family dictate my worth and started living for myself again. The pride shining in Elijah's eyes made my cheeks flush. That's my girl. Just you wait. Once you embrace that fierce spirit again, there'll be no stopping you. As our laughter mingled over the crisp white linen, I felt a profound sense of possibility taking root. This was only the beginning, but finally, I could see the path towards reclaiming my independence clearly. The aroma of sautéed garlic and fresh herbs filled the air as I deftly chopped vegetables for the rustic ratatouille I was preparing. Around me, my classmates bustled about their stations, a chorus of knives rhythmically tapping cutting boards. Excellent knife work, Ruby. Elijah's rich voice rumbled in my ear as he circled behind me. You're really getting the hang of those precision cuts. I felt my cheeks warm at his praise, an unfamiliar but heady sense of pride blooming in my chest. Just a few months ago, I would have balked at the mere notion of taking cooking classes. But now, with each new skill I mastered, I felt layers of the insecurity instilled by Mason's family stripping away. She's a natural. Chloe piped up from the station beside me, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of admiration and something deeper. Relief, perhaps. As if some invisible burden had been lifted from her young shoulders. My heart clenched at the realization that my daughter had witnessed the gradual erosion of my spirit over the years. Had sensed the dimming of the vibrant, passionate woman I'd once been, even if she couldn't articulate it. But now, finally, she was getting a glimpse of the person I was rediscovering. The person I should have been all along. Elijah's approving nod only bolstered my confidence further. With each class, each new recipe tackled, I felt myself unfurling like a tightly bound blossom, finally allowed to stretch towards the sun. The simple act of creating something with my own two hands, of nourishing others through my efforts, stirred something primal and grounding within me. This was the first step in reclaiming my identity, my worth. And with Elijah and Chloe's support, I knew there would be no stopping me. Of course, Janet wasn't about to let my newfound passion go unchallenged. Her latest tactic was an insidious whisper campaign, spreading rumors among the family's elite social circle about my supposed indiscretions with Elijah. I could only imagine the sordid tales she was spinning to explain my blossoming independence and our deepening bond. "Don't let her get to you," Elijah murmured when I confided my frustrations over Janet's pettiness. "She's lashing out because she can sense her control over you slipping away. This is just her pathetic attempt to regain leverage by attacking your reputation." His words rang true, but they did little to dull the sting of Janet's cruelty. She simply couldn't fathom that I was finally claiming autonomy over my own life, that I no longer craved her approval or acceptance. In her mind, I was still the meek, insecure woman she could easily manipulate. But I was no longer that person, and Janet's transparent machinations only strengthened my resolve. If she wanted to spread vicious lies, let her. I was done cowering in fear of her twisted narratives. The first true cracks in Mason's indifference came when Chloe, bless her heart, took my side against her grandmother's toxic meddling. I'll never forget the stricken look on his face when our daughter, voice trembling with a maturity far beyond her years, expressed how proud she was to see me coming into my own at last. "I want Mom to be happy," she'd said, her eyes boring into Mason's with an intensity that seemed to shake him to his core. "And if that means standing up to Grandma and doing what's right for herself, then I'm with her all the way." In that moment, I knew Mason was forced to confront the harsh reality of how deeply his passivity had damaged not just me, but our child as well. His unwillingness to go against his parents' wishes had robbed Chloe of a mother who was truly present, replacing her with a hollow, defeated shell of a woman. It was the first crack in the facade of our family, the beginning of an upheaval that would drastically reshape all our lives. But I couldn't bring myself to regret it, not when I saw the pride shining in Chloe's eyes as she watched me blossom into the self-assured woman I'd always longed to be. The annual Wilson family gathering was usually an affair I dreaded. Hours of forced smiles and polite chit-chat, while Janet not so subtly reminded me of my place on the outskirts. But this year was different. This year, I had Elijah and Chloe standing firmly in my corner. As the three of us entered the elegantly appointed sitting room, I felt a surge of confidence at the matching looks of disdain on Janet and Perry's faces. Let them judge all they wanted. I was done craving their approval. "Ruby, darling, how wonderful of you to join us," Janet simpered, her tone cloyingly sweet. "I must say, these cooking classes of yours have become quite the topic of conversation." My blood ran cold at the implied threat. Of course, she'd try to undermine my progress through vicious gossip. I opened my mouth to respond, but Elijah beat me to it. "If the topic is Ruby's incredible talent and dedication, then I'm happy to confirm the rumors are absolutely true," he said smoothly, his arm sliding around my waist in a subtle show of possession. "She's been an exemplary student." Janet's eyes narrowed fractionally, but she pasted on a sickly smile. "Well, isn't that precious? Though I can't help but wonder about the propriety of your relationship with my daughter-in-law." The barb landed as intended. A murmur of scandalized whispers rippled through the gathered relatives. I felt heat creep up my neck, shame and defiance warring within me. But Chloe, bless her heart, didn't hesitate to rally to my defense. "If you're implying what I think you are, Grandma, then you're way out of line," she said, her voice ringing with conviction. "Mom's finally doing something for herself after years of letting you and Grandpa walk all over her. If that bothers you, then maybe you should take a long, hard look in the mirror." A stunned hush fell over the room as Janet sputtered, clearly not anticipating such frank defiance from her own granddaughter. In that moment, I felt an immense surge of pride and love for Chloe, my brave girl who had witnessed the worst of her grandmother's cruelty towards me. "You see, Janet?" A new voice cut through the tension. Aunt Miriam, Mason's sister whom I'd always envied for her unflappable poise. "This is precisely the sort of toxic behavior that's finally opened Ruby's eyes to how terribly you've treated her." Janet turned a mottled shade of puce as more voices joined the chorus of disapproval. For too long, it seemed, the rest of the family had turned a blind eye to her emotional manipulation tactics. But Chloe's impassioned defense, coupled with Miriam's candid observations, finally exposed the truth for all to see. "Well," I found my voice at last, raising an expectant eyebrow at my husband. "Anything to add, Mason?" He looked utterly poleaxed, his gaze pinging between me, our daughter, his fuming mother, and the accusatory stares of his relatives. Here it was, the moment when he would be forced to choose, side with the family that had controlled every aspect of his life, or stand in support of his wife and child. The seconds ticked by in agonizing silence. Then finally, Mason seemed to regain his powers of speech. "Ruby, I had no idea," he trailed off, shaking his head slowly. "No, that's not true. Some part of me knew. I chose not to see it, to ignore the damage my parents were doing in their efforts to control you. And Chloe." Janet looked ready to combust, her face purpling dangerously, but Mason pressed on, his voice gaining strength and clarity with each word. "You're right, Ruby. You've been diminished, stifled, all to maintain some twisted sense of obedience to the family name, but no more. If this is the price of holding on to the past, of letting my parents dictate our lives, then I choose you. Both of you. As those last words rang out, I felt the world shift underneath my feet. For the first time in our marriage, Mason was putting me first, not his parents' money or status, but the well-being of his wife and child. It was a pivotal moment, one that would irrevocably splinter our family dynamics. But as I met Elijah's proud gaze and felt Chloe's small hand slip into mine, I knew I had all the strength and support I needed to face the fallout head-on. The silence that followed Mason's declaration was deafening. Janet looked apoplectic, her face mottled and lips drawn into a thin, bloodless line. Perry simply gaped at his son, seemingly stunned into uncharacteristic speechlessness. I could scarcely believe what I'd just witnessed. Mason, my husband who had spent years deferring to his parents' whims, had finally grown a backbone. And all because of me. Because he'd been forced to confront the harsh reality of how his passivity had eroded our family. Elijah's warm hand found the small of my back, grounding me as the magnitude of this moment washed over me. This was it, the breaking point, the catalyst for irrevocable change whether Janet and Perry liked it or not. Well, I found my voice at last, lifting my chin defiantly. No snide remarks? No attempts to dismiss or belittle me? Janet's eyes smoldered with impotent rage, but she seemed to realize that her usual manipulation tactics would no longer work. Not when Mason had so publicly declared his allegiance. This is unacceptable, she bit out finally. You're letting this outsider poison your mind against your own family. Ruby is my family, Mason countered, his voice steady despite the undoubtedly difficult stand he was taking. As is Chloe, and for too long I've let you control and demean them for the sake of, what? Upholding some twisted sense of obedience? He shook his head, seeming to finally see the dynamics of our relationship clearly for the first time. No more. If maintaining this family means further enabling your toxic behavior, then I'm out. Janet looked like she might actually combust. You insolent boy, after everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? Everything you've done was for your own selfish benefit, Chloe piped up, startling us all with the vehemence in her young voice. You never cared about making Mom happy, only about controlling her so she'd stay quiet and obedient like a good little trophy wife. A muscle ticked in Perry's jaw, but he remained uncharacteristically silent, seemingly unwilling to challenge his granddaughter's assessment. Janet, however, had no such compunctions. How dare you speak to me that way, you ungrateful little... That's enough. The words were out of my mouth before I could think twice. I will not have you speaking to my daughter with such disrespect, Janet. Not anymore. She rounded on me, eyes blazing. Or what? You'll finally grow a spine and stand up to me? A sad smile curved my lips. No, I'm done playing your games, done pandering to your twisted need for control. Chloe and I are moving out, at least temporarily. It's time we had some distance, and I had a chance to rediscover who I am without your toxic influence. Janet looked as though she'd been slapped. Clearly, she'd never envisioned that her cruel machinations could lead to such decisive actions. But I felt curiously calm, buoyed by the support of Chloe, Mason, and Elijah. This is for the best, Elijah murmured, his thumb tracing soothing circles against my back. Some time apart, to heal, to rediscover your strength. I'll be right here whenever you need me. I turned to him, feeling something fragile but beautiful unfurling in my chest. Thank you, for everything. I couldn't have reached this point without you. His answering smile was soft, full of the affection and respect I'd been sorely lacking for far too long. In that moment, I knew our bond had been reforged into something new, something that could potentially lead to more than just friendship. But for now, I had to focus on putting myself and Chloe first, on embracing our independence and breaking free from the toxic cycles that had stunted my growth for far too long. As we turned to go, I caught Mason's eye one last time. He looked shaken, yes, but also relieved, as though some invisible burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Perhaps now he could finally begin to atone for the damage his passivity had wrought. I didn't know what lay ahead for us, but one thing was certain. I would never again let myself be diminished or controlled. This was just the start of my journey towards rediscovering my sense of self-worth. 1 year later, I stood in the kitchen of my cozy new home, sunlight streaming through the windows as I deftly chopped fresh herbs for the salad I was preparing. The simple domesticity of the scene would have seemed utterly mundane not so long ago, but now it filled me with a sense of hard-won peace and contentment. Need any help, babe? I turned with a smile to find Elijah leaning against the doorframe, regarding me with unabashed adoration. My heart still fluttered a little at the sight of him, this man who had helped me reclaim my identity, my self-worth. I've got it under control, I assured him. Though you're welcome to pour us some wine if you'd like, he chuckled, pushing off the doorframe to cross the room and snag the open bottle of crisp Sauvignon Blanc from the counter. As he brushed past me to fetch glasses, his free hand skimmed affectionately over the small of my back, sending a shiver of awareness through me. We'd come so far, Elijah and I, from the rekindling of an old flame to something deeper, more profound, true partnership and understanding. After the tumultuous events of last year, he had remained my unflagging champion, helping me establish a new normal apart from Mason's toxic family. Of course, that separation hadn't been without its challenges. The gossips and social climbers in our circle had been utterly scandalized by the very public rift in the Wilson family. Suddenly, the cracks in the previously immaculate facade were plain for all to see. Mason had certainly felt the backlash, both socially and financially, as Janet and Perry's vindictiveness reached new heights. But to his credit, he had weathered it all with a quiet dignity, seemingly committed to atoning for his past sins of omission. As for Janet and Perry, they had become virtual pariahs after the truth about their cruel treatment towards me over the years finally came to light. Their lofty social standing meant little when the world saw their true colors: manipulative, controlling, and utterly devoid of empathy for their own family. An arm snaked around my waist, pulling me from my reverie. I leaned back against Elijah's solid warmth, letting the tension bleed from my shoulders. "You looked a million miles away just now," he murmured, nuzzling the sensitive skin just below my ear. "Everything okay?" I twisted in his embrace to face him fully. "Everything is perfect," I assured him. I was just marveling at how different my life is now. How free I feel. The adoration in his gaze stole my breath. "You've more than earned that freedom, Ruby, and I'll spend every day ensuring you never lose sight of your strength again." His words unleashed a swell of emotion in my chest. Once, not so long ago, I would have balked at such open displays of affection and devotion. Would have dismissed them as pretty words, ultimately empty of any real meaning. But I knew better now. Knew that the love and respect shining in Elijah's eyes was utterly, beautifully real. Which is why, when he sank down onto one knee before me, cradling a ring box in one hand, I felt nothing but pure joy uncurl within me. "Ruby Adams, you are the strongest, most resilient woman I've ever known," he said, voice rough with emotion. "These past months, watching you blossom into your true self, it's been the greatest privilege of my life. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears stung my eyes even as a brilliant smile curved my lips. "Yes," I whispered fervently. 1,000 times, yes. As Elijah slipped the dazzling diamond onto my finger, I knew I had finally found the happiness and sense of belonging I had sought for so long. Not in Mason's wealthy, prestigious family, but in the warmth, support, and unwavering love of the man who had reclaimed my heart. Chloe's delighted squeal from the doorway only compounded my elation. My brave girl who had stood by me through all the turmoil now beamed at us both with undisguised joy. "I take it this means we're going to be one big happy family?" she asked, only half teasing. Elijah's arm slipped securely around my waist as he grinned at her. "You'd better believe it, kiddo. No more walking on eggshells or dimming your light for anyone else's comfort. Just us, facing the world on our terms." I felt something inside me settle, a piece I hadn't even realized was missing finally clicking into place. This was my family now, a man who cherished me for exactly who I was, and a daughter who had inherited my determination in spades. Together, we were a force to be reckoned with, and I couldn't wait to see what the future held.